Okay, welcome everybody. Happy Earth Day. Seems appropriate that we'd be meeting. Um, Sarah is recording Vermont Edition or live on VPR right now, so you're stuck with just me. And I think, have the concept would be we would talk a little bit about the Senate budget, which not a ton of answers there yet. And then dive into a little bit of the working groups that we've set up around the American Rescue Recovery, ARPA. I don't know, I forget the acronym. So that will be our attempt here. Andy, let me actually ask you, part of the Senate budget process is the T-bill, and Senator Perchlik is our Vice Chair of Senate Transportation. So, Andy, could I turn it over to you, and you can give us a little update on your work?
Yeah, thanks, Chris. The Senate Transportation Committee did vote out the T-bill yesterday. So we did include in there Section 2 is a good place to look if you're just interested in any kind of climate-related component of the T-bill. We put it all into one section, something that Senator Ashe had started 2 years ago. So we continued with that tradition. So it's an easy way to see everything in there because, you know, we do everything from park and rides to PV incentives to electric bike incentives. Thank you, Representative Burke. And so it's an easy way to see all those things. It lists how many spaces for each park and ride and everything like that. So it's an easy way. Just look at the bill 433 and look at Section 2 of the Senate version. So that'll go to appropriations and be on the floor next week. So there is, you know, I thought the House did a great job of trying to change the conversation around the transportation budget with their transformation bill that they started with. So I think it's a good step in the right direction. There's nothing too dramatic. You know, we made progress, but it's steps in the right direction and setting us up for more progress in the future, I think.
Andy, any big changes from the House proposal?
No, I mean, we did. There was one thing that we took out, but I think that Kurt isn't going to like his stuff about paving the shoulders, which the AOT said they were doing anyway. So it was kind of seen as extra language. I think that's the only kind of thing that might, but no, we basically took.
We added the equity language.
The equity, we added that, right? So folks worked with AOT and they supported that. I had an amendment to require AOT to do renewable heating in all their buildings going from fiscal year 23 forward. That unfortunately Senate committee thought that it was more of a state public policy issue that should be dealt in institutions. So they didn't add that, but we have a lot about electrification. There's an electrification plan in there, and there's a lot of incentives for moving both, just regular electric vehicle incentives, but also specifically looking at low-income Vermonters and how we can move them to different transportation alternatives. So there's some definitely really good stuff in there. My House did a great job of leading it off.
Thank you, Senator Perchlik. And Senate Finance did look at the charge to the PUC to come up with an electric car charging rate. We approved that language, moved that along. So a couple of questions. Representative Cordes.
Yes, any money to help municipalities with the installation of EV chargers? In my district, installation costs are one of the biggest barriers.
The only EV charging money in there is for multifamily housing, low income That's one change that we did. I think the House bill just said multifamily housing, and we said low income or affordable multifamily housing. So there's money for municipalities that they could use, but my guess is the costs are too high that they probably would rather use that money for infrastructure improvements like paving or culverts, but they could use it for for charging stations. But the AOTs, I tried to get some additional funding for a business charging program, but AOT basically said, oh, there's a lot of infrastructure money coming down the road, and they kind of wanted to hold off and see what that was going to be before we put more state money into incentivizing charging. But we definitely need more of them.
Thank you, Andy. Representative Dolan.
Thank you. And thank you, Senator Perchlik. This is fantastic. So I'm really, really thrilled about what we're doing with respect to the transportation sector. So kudos to both House and Senate transportation. My one comment is to recognize that in addition to these incredibly important changes in policy and funding and focus, what also has to go hand in hand with our land use policies to ensure that we're maintaining smart growth principles and how we develop, to ensure that we are in fact providing for non-vehicular travel in our communities. We can't solve our climate, transportation related climate challenges without important land use, continuing with our focus on smart growth. And I flagged the Act 250 bill that we're working on as one element to that, but just know that what has to go hand in hand is how we're building and developing on our land, on our landscape. Definitely agreed.
And I remembered one thing that we did add to the bill in the Senate, which is a huge thing, but it's a start, is we added a new goal for electric vehicle charging, because the governor had said this goal of 30 miles from where anybody lives, but it was as the crow flies. So it could be 30 miles, but it could take you an hour to get there. So we put in a new goal that every interstate interchange, exit would have to have one within 5 miles. And then from any point on any state highway, you would have a charging station, a fast charger within 25 miles. So whenever you got in your vehicle, you're on a state highway, you would only have 25 miles to go. It's just a goal, so there's no deadline, but at least we set the flag or where we want to get to.
Terrific. Thank you, Andy. Representative Campbell. Scott.
Thank you. Another thing on EV charging is helping folks install them at home. That's going to be a real hurdle for lower income folks to get into electric car, because most charging is done at home, right? So, and the cost to install a level 2 charger at home, can be $500 to $1,000. It's just another hurdle. So I'd like to see us address that at some point. I was just scanning through section 2 and I didn't see anything about that. So, oops, you're muted.
There's the $1 million for affordable multifamily housing charging, so that could help some, especially those.
Well, that's multifamily, right?
Yeah. So yeah, it's just, there is nothing in there right now for just somebody that needs it at their home.
Yeah.
But I agree with you. It's an issue.
Yeah. It might be just a touch over the horizon, because EVs haven't quite broke yet, but they will soon.
A mechanic say that he was waiting until they came down to the cost of a Toyota Corolla. He said that was sort of the marker for average. At that point, you'd see them explode. We'll see. We're not there yet. Representative Till.
Yeah, I don't know what other utilities are doing, but Green Mountain Power, as part of the incentive, was actually installing those for free for people.
They give them to you for free, but they don't pay for this.
Oh, okay. They give them to you. But
that does help, because that's $500 or something. Yeah.
You also have to have internet and Wi-Fi handy in order for them to do that.
Right.
Yeah, and we're one of this is a tier 3 investment, right? So part of our renewable energy standards to help people switch fuels, they can make those investments that way. But one of the challenges, and something we're going to look at in Senate Finance, if I can help it, is when we're adding incentives to help people get into electric vehicles, the utilities are taking credit potentially for those state dollars and getting more tier 3 credit than I think we would suggest they deserve. So we have to, it's a technical thing, but for those of us steeped in this, it's an important change or an important fix that we got to get through there. It's, you know, this is all evolving quickly. Anyway, all right, thank you. Any other last questions for the transportation folks? In the big bill, I'll just be honest with you, and Senator Perchlik and I have been trying to figure out how to present this to you today. It's super confusing from where I sit. You know, we've had a bunch of emails. So folks watching, thank you for your pressure that way. Keep $200 million of the $1 billion money aside for climate. That's terrific. That's kind of the governor's proposal. Somebody from the House side can correct me, but the House sort of crudely fenced off about $100 million to be able to respond to next year's climate plan, right? From the Climate Council. Do I have that right? Anybody want to jump in? All right, we'll assume that's crudely right. But there's a lot of work being done in these sort of big loops, like let's just hold this 150 million for broadband, you know, things like that, and not a lot of detail. And of course, the budget and the way it works is very centered on details. So we're trying to figure out how to have input, how to keep having influence, and to make sure we're protecting the climate investments that people have talked about. And I'm not honestly sure what I could say in terms of our success so far. There have been good discussions. I know that there's significant investment in weatherization that Senate Natural Resources has been working on. But more than that, I don't have a lot of details to share, unfortunately. So Senator Perchlik, I don't know if you have anything to add. And I can't see the whole screen here. Are there any other senators on board here today with us? Not yet. So Andy, any other detail you can offer for folks?
Yeah, like you said, it's been kind of frustrating, the process for us to not having a climate caucus person on appropriations, really. So it's a little murky, but I think the work that we've done with the committees, what I've heard is still helpful, because even though we don't know exactly how they're going to do this, these ideas will be helpful as we get, you know, go down closer, because it could be that they just section off a chunk of money, so similar to what the governor suggested. But I think there will be ARPA appropriations in there, but it's just difficult to know how they're going about the process, which is not helpful, I know.
Yeah, well, and certainly we know there's going to be a significant investment in broadband. We've all talked about that being part of our climate infrastructure. We know there's broad recognition that our emission reduction plan coming out of the Climate Council is going to take investment, and this money will go there. So lots of interesting discussion. Just a few details at this point. I think, unless there are questions which we may or may not have an attempt to answer, I will turn it over to Mari. Oh, okay. Let's go to Representative Kornheiser.
Do you know when the questions might be answered? And I'm saying that not, I think the budget process is more confusing for everyone this year than it normally is. So, you know,
yeah,
I think we're as hoping for clarity on our side as you are on your side. So just wondering if you even have a sense of timeline.
I expect the budget will move through the Senate next week. And then, but I also know committees of jurisdiction are asking for more time. So as of right now, it's my expectation that it'll be next week. In effort to, it's important for anybody watching, and of course legislators know this, the ARPA money is meant to operate over several years, 3+ years, 3.5 years. So we have set up these working groups to look at a few different areas where we could try to influence investments, both at the state level and even municipalities and schools. So some good work has started there. That will be an ongoing process, I expect, and hope that, in fact, we can do more detailed work and be ready for January. But Mari, are you in a position to walk us through some of that? Oh, yes, you are. Great. Some of what's started. I'm going to turn it over to you with pleasure, and take it away, Representative Cordes. Thanks.
Thank you. And I think, especially because of the limited time we have, we should keep this to a 30,000 or 20,000 foot view. And folks from each of the work groups can give just a brief synopsis. This document here, Becca, Representative White's, the intern that's working with her from UVM, helped us collate all of this information from the different work groups. So there's a lot of detail. The first section here is just an outline of the work groups or topic areas. There really wasn't a transportation work group, but we have a heavy hitting transportation group. Anyway, the next section is a collation of general themes that came out of the amazing responses we got. We got a lot of responses. Each group did a really fantastic job with help from other organizations getting the word out there that we want this feedback from the public, from stakeholders, from people interested in climate and energy. So here's the general themes. You can see those, so I won't go into them. I saw Representative Serpinat here. Would you or someone from your work group like to touch on climate resiliency and local food security? And I'll just point out before you start that there is definitely crossover in the work groups about different topics, like workforce development is in the local food security work group as well.
I am happy to pass it to Senator Pearson. I am on the phone with a constituent. I am so sorry.
Sorry.
No problem. Yeah, we actually, Representative Mary Hooper and Heather and I got together quickly, and then I've just been too swamped to take the next step. But very quickly on the food security, we were looking at ideas, brainstorming ideas like money to Efficiency Vermont to help farmers reduce energy use, investments we could make to help extend the farm season. So greenhouse hoop houses. There's also real needs for infrastructure like storage, potentially regional food aggregation infrastructure, whether that's sort of warehouses, things like that. I will say, as part of back to the budget, but it relates, we did get money in there to help schools invest in local food and bring local food into their cafeterias. We know that our farm to school movement has been pretty successful in Vermont. We're trying here now to push this to all schools, not just those that have already signed up. So those are some of the ideas that are underway and need more brainstorming and more work to develop further.
Thanks, Senator. I saw Scott's hand go up.
Yes, I'm just wondering about how we're doing at no-till farming. How widespread is that? Is there anything that can be done to encourage ag practices that build the soil? That seems like a really important carbon sink.
Yeah, I would say one of the ideas we came up with was some greater investment in UVM extension. They do a lot of work to help people transition to grazing, which is good for soil health. There's also been investments in ongoing way in ecosystem services working group, which is farmer led initiative to recognize the value of our farms in sequestering carbon and reducing water runoff and stuff. So some of those have been underway. It's and are being amplified and continued with these potentially federal investments.
Okay, great.
Thanks. Moving on to workforce. Who's going to take it off for workforce?
So I'll start off. I'm going to do one, and then Scott will do the next, and I'll do the next. So there are, if I recall correctly, 4 broad themes. We pulled together about 40 nonprofits, or 40. Can you scroll up? You're going so fast.
Sorry, I'm just going down to the bottom
to show.
Just see how far down it goes.
Yep, there you go. We pulled together maybe 30 or 40 representatives from higher ed, from CTE, from you name it, a bunch of nonprofits. It was really helpful. The first one that everyone agreed on was a statewide marketing campaign to develop slogan, themes, materials, acquire paid ads, to really focus on Vermont's high pay, high demand jobs. New York State does have something like this. We should make sure that it's universal and can be used by many different entities. And then to market it to both consumers so that we're building demand for increased, skilled labor. So this is like heat pump installers, solar installers, plumbers, electricians, that sort of thing. And then also to adult learners, high school and middle school students, as well as their parents. And really removing the stigma of a job in the trades, because it really, for far less time, 4 years spent in college and far less upfront investment in your education, you come out with fantastic skills that are really just so valuable to the community. Some implementation specifics, we went a bit more into the weeds, and I know you want this at the 30,000 feet, but we just threw this out so that, it could be a starting point. I'll focus on how much. We had thought about 1 million per year for 3 years. Paid ads are not cheap. So a little bit of background info there. I won't talk through it all, but there are several wins in the clean energy workforce world. Scott, you want to do the next one?
Okay, sure. Where are we here? Close them. This actually should be you, but because this was something that you brought up, Gabrielle. But the money gap between high school and career education schools. When a high school student takes a course at a CTE center, apparently the high school loses revenue, and so there's it's not an incentive for high schools to make that easy to do for their students, so that seems like a pretty easy thing to fund, at least for a couple of years, and see if that makes a difference. Looking at this, so actually I didn't write all this up, so I'm just reading it for the first time. So yeah, and I don't know how much this would cost. I don't know. I don't think we know what the scale of the problem is, but making it, studying that, making that available would certainly be a good thing.
And from our working group, there were specific people that we could reach out to for more information and to hone that idea down, if there was interest in it. Next up was funding mobile labs. So one of the conversation pieces was how can we, connect dots between folks, just being released from incarceration, and yet there are various Department of Correction restrictions that may prevent some of these folks from going onto school property. One of the things that was looked into by one of our CTEs was a mobile lab for like welding, and it's about $600,000 per year. So sorry, per lab. But this could also be helpful for hard to reach rural areas, and just sort of getting additional training resources out into the community.
So as far as curricular development, this is really kind of a core issue. A lot of the kids in K through 12 schools, well, especially high schools, aren't getting exposed to the opportunities that are offered by work in the building industry and in the electrical industry, and so providing those resources is really important, and actually educating the teachers is really important. We heard this a lot in that series of meetings that we had a couple of years ago around building thermal issues. The importance actually even of just basic physics and basic understanding of how heat transfers in younger grades is really important as well. And then offering courses at the CTE centers in not only weatherization, but I think Gabrielle already mentioned things like heat pump installation and electric vehicle charging stations and all kinds of grid maintenance, all kinds of dimensions to the problem that we need workforce for. So let's see.
Yeah, and so
go ahead. Would you just go ahead there, Gabriel?
I think the last one, I think this is the last one, to pay incentive bonuses. So to pay contractors and businesses to take on lightly skilled learners via internships, or you could subsidize the wages for the new hires and the interns. Pay incentive bonuses to high schools, not just making up the gap that we discussed earlier, but actually paying an incentive bonus for referring students to CTEs. Other ideas were, we have several trade associations that have businesses and, really skilled tradespeople that represent their makeup. And is it possible to develop internship programs so that businesses are connected to students coming through the pipeline? And is that a way to really connect the dots between the actual people out in the field and the folks who are getting trained to do that work? And so we threw out some ideas here. And I think that's it. Then it's transportation.
I'm happy to kick it off for transportation, but I'd love to have Molly, Representative Burke, talk a little bit about our process.
Yeah, we, I know, Chris, in the beginning you said, well, we don't really need to have a transportation group, but I felt like we really did because there's just so much to do. And so Representative White, Representative Stebbins, and Representative Bartholomew and I got together a couple times to sort of come up with a list and then try to prioritize. And I think, the big things are, we want to be like 2 years ahead in terms of electric charging infrastructure. So that's got to be a really, really big thing. And my colleagues can talk more specifically. And then the sort of EV incentives really goes along with that. And then, sort of the third big thing is livable and walkable communities, sidewalks and bike and pedestrian infrastructure and things like that. And that goes along with what Carrie was talking about, land use. So we can get more details. Whoever wants to jump in, Gabrielle or Becca or John, on the details of what we came up with. And I think it probably needs, definitely more honing and more thinking about what kind of investments, how much money would need to go into each one. But this is our start.
Yeah, thanks, Representative Burke. Yeah, I would just add on, it was interesting to have the opportunity to go through all the replies from our municipalities and everything, and just it felt like every other request was around electric vehicles or something transportation. So this is a hot topic. And to just build off of what Representative Burke said, when we got out into kind of the three categories that we were thinking about, there's opportunity. We're trying to think like, what's one-time monies that we can we dedicate towards projects that will have a longer term impact. And definitely the infrastructure for electric vehicle charging hits that piece. But on top of that, we have to think about the marketing. How do we get consumer awareness, all of that good stuff. And then we broke, actually, as Representative Burke said, we did break it out from the charging stations to having an actual electric vehicle piece. And we spent some time talking about all the different vehicles and things that you could make electric. So if it uses fossil fuel now to get from point A to point B, we tried to think of a way to have it be supported electrically. So if you scroll a little bit down, Mari, to perfect, one of the things that we talked about was this is a lower priority for us, but thinking about how to fund EVs and more efficient vehicles for things like home health care or Meals on Wheels or light duty fleets. So all sorts of things like that, how to also get kind of those service industry based things going EV. And then we had some lower priority EV related options that you'll see there. And then you could actually, in your mind, if you're hearing the 2 EV pieces and then seeing the sidewalks as third, that's not a reflection on the priority here. We did, in fact, Representative Stebbins suggested moving sidewalks up to above EVs, which we could concur with, I think, as a group, because we completely agree with what Representative Dolan said, which is thinking about how do we make these places not focused on car travel as the only way to get somewhere, and how do we make that actually worthwhile, whether it be safety for all Vermonters, where that equity piece comes in, or just expanding some of the options that are out there. And then finally, we had a couple of ideas, again, trying to, how do we get to the one-time funding goal? Microtransit came up. If you're hearing anything about that acronym for MPL is the Montpelier microtransit work. There's a lot of great innovation when it comes to non-fixed route public transportation. And we're not quite sure how we would recommend using one-time funding to make those more of a reality or to grow that program. But what idea was to try to get staff on board for a short period of time and then support municipalities or organizations in community to actually be able to do that work on their own. So that's transportation in a nutshell, but there's so much more. So Representative Stebbins, if you want to weigh in, or Representative Burke, any more? But
I think that's.
Go ahead, Molly. Did you have something, Molly?
Oh, sorry, no, sorry, I was talking and you were talking. I said, I think that covers it for now. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to save equity for last. I'm not sure that we have anyone from that group. I can touch on it, but let's get to the other work groups first. Anyone here that wants to talk about this energy section?
Well, this is Gabrielle again. This is related to sort of the mapping concept in transportation. And it's really that while our distribution utilities and Velco does a lot of mapping and planning, there are other states that have purposely said, for example, New York and New Mexico have purposely said, we need, a 2-year or 2 to 3 year sort of grid modernization plan and approach and analysis. And so the thinking here was, this is definitely infrastructure related. As we're looking at broadband, as we're looking at where EV charging stations should be going, as we're looking at storage combined with solar, making sure that we really have a long-term as well as a short-term, focus on that's coordinated across the whole state. So that was focus on that.
Great, thank you.
I would just jump in as a former member of Energy and Technology. This is a lot more complicated than it would first appear, and it's also really important. It seems like we would have this information, but we don't really. So this would be a great use of one-time money.
Yeah, we have parts of it, right? I mean, Velco does long-range planning, and there's a lot of planning, and which is why our lights are on and we can all charge our cars. But the bigger picture of how we're transitioning to electrification, that could be more coordinated for sure.
Yeah, well, I mean, you would think we would know where every pole is and what's on it, but we don't. So,
All right, Kath, Representative James is going to touch on how we gathered our responses in the municipal and school work group.
Yeah, thanks, Mari. Mari developed a really great Google form, and we were able to write a cover letter and then send that link out pretty broadly. And it's something that we could resend to. But we invited folks to fill out a very simple form, and it went to municipal and school leaders, municipal and school officials. And at this point, that has gone out so far through VCAN and Energy Action Network. It's gone out to through the Vermont Natural Resources Council list. It went out to all the regional planning commissions. The Vermont League of Cities and Towns sent it out for us. And then when schools get back from break, we're hoping that the Vermont School Boards or Vermont Principals Association will send that out for us. So it got pretty good exposure, I think. And I think we all got the link also to send to our local folks. And I'm thinking that we could, wait a while and then kind of resend if we don't feel we have enough responses or we just want to remind people.
And here's just a quick view of all the types of folks that responded. And in general, you can see we got most responses, I think, were related to municipalities. And the general themes, I can get back, were these here. And with a heavy, as Representative White mentioned, with a heavy emphasis on EV infrastructure, as well as some emphasis on supporting downtown development and protecting wildlife corridors, forest blocks, and also infrastructure was a big one. Anybody else that wants Senator Perchlik, do you want to add anything? I will say that this Vermont Window Dressers program is a great Bristol area project, a volunteer that's helped with this aspect of weatherization. Okay.
Fantastic. Sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but it sounds like you're wrapping up.
Yeah, and anyone from Equity here? If not, I can just highlight what they worked on. So one of the issues that Equity talked about was a common question: how do they function retrospectively, or participating in each committee? Right now, we're at the point. This was one of a couple of models that Equity looked at in order to ensure and measure how we have equity in our work. So I think we'll be hearing more from them as that work group gets a chance to look at the work of all the other work groups. Everyone okay with me stopping sharing now?
Yeah, please do. And wonderful. Thank you. So a lot of good work going. And in case anyone is watching and heard Molly say that I didn't think transportation needed to be a working group, we were beginning, that would be quite a statement to.
I didn't mean that. You said that we were doing such good work.
Well, we're trying to fill the gaps and transportation and energy in particular.
I didn't mean to.
Yeah, no, I understand. I just want to make sure we all understand some of what we're angling for here. So a lot of good work. This is going to continue, but a great start. And, I'm really particularly impressed and appreciate the leadership that pulled in local voices and municipalities and others. I think that's sets the stage for success down the road. Do people have general questions or questions for any of the presenters? We don't have too much more time, but I think at least somebody had in the chat asked a question. Yeah, Representative James.
Thanks, Senator Pearson. I just had, it was comments really for the
Workforce Development Group. As you move forward with your ideas, I think you should reach out to Advance Vermont, because they are developing My Future Vermont portal, and it's basically a website that their focus, they're housed within VSAC, and their focus is on high pay, high demand careers. And they're doing a lot of great work around that. So you might want to just make sure you reach out to them for your future conversations. And then I need to check in and find out what the status of this is, but there was a pilot program on how to reconfigure or reorganize how our tech centers are funded. I think it was Act 189, and it went forward. And I don't know whether the results are just sort of got sidetracked by COVID, but I'll check into that, because some work is ongoing on doing funding our tech centers in a better way, so that high schools don't feel like every student they send to a tech center is a loss of revenue for them.
Thank you. Representative Austin. Sarita, what's your question?
Yes, thank you. Just want to second Representative James about Advance Vermont. Tom Cheney there is, they are awesome, and their whole focus is on adult learners and workforce development. So that's a plug for that. My question is, and maybe Senator Pearson, you would know more about this, the electric airplanes. There was a fleet of electric airplanes that were just bought by UPS, and the electric airplanes are produced in Vermont, made in Vermont. And they were talking about like a drone type capacity to deliver packaging, do you know anything more about that, that technology or anything?
Only what I've read in the paper, which is very in early stages. I think UPS sort of is looking forward to testing them out. I don't know, anybody else?
We did, Chris, we did hear about it in transportation. Beta Technologies out of Burlington is designing the plane. It's not a drone. It would have a pilot, and they sold it to the post office, USPS, or was it UPS? Now I'm forgetting which one it was. But anyway, they say they're going to move forward with those piloted planes, and we didn't hear anything about a drone aspect of that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Representative Campbell. Scott.
Oh, I have a neat video I'll put in the chat that somebody sent me recently about Beta Technologies. What was I going to say? Oh, there's a part of, I think it's H159 that included the better places, and that was sort of the marquee part of that bill. That also included workforce funding, and it's now in, I think, Senate Finance, that bill. So that would also be a specific place to try to get some of this money, some of these initiatives on workforce put in there. Forgot to mention that before.
Thank you. And you remind me of a question for anyone on education committees. I think one of my hopes would be that we'd use our high schools for adult education programs. We've done that to varying degrees, but I think generally the concept we need to promote is more broad use of our school buildings and better community buy-in, and this workforce challenge that we're on the cusp of seems like an opportunity there. So
H106, the Community Schools Bill, check it out.
Okay,
it's in Senate Education.
Well, if only we knew somebody in Senate oh, Andy, again, Senator Perchlik in the hot seat. Good.
Speaking of,
think of that, Andy, with my endorsement. All right. I think we'll probably leave it there. Scott, did you have another question, or are you hand hold over there?
Yeah, I have it down, but I did put the link to that Beta Tech.
Thank you. Representative Stebbins, our final question, I think, for the day.
Thanks. I guess, Mike, I would love to figure out if there's a plan to try and share this with various folks who might be in the committees of jurisdiction, or if there's a sense of where this information goes next or how, because there are a
Sure.
lot of great ideas here.
Yeah. The question of where it goes is sort of straightforward. When is a little murkier to me. So obviously where it's practical to have influence on this budget, we want to do that. I do think the bulk of this will end up being a between now and January to be ready to push, present to committees of jurisdiction in next session. So maybe between now and early next week, we could float up some very short-term ideas that people have. I think what I would suggest is that Sarah and I and others may reach out by email to see if we could truly and we can look at the documents and gather the ideas that maybe are realistic in the very short term and try to get them forward. I mean, there's no reason to delay if we don't need to. But I will be frank and say it's been really, really unclear where to inject those ideas in a meaningful way from my treading around. So a couple other questions, and we really do need to break because the Senate floor is in 8 minutes. Representative Burke, Molly.
I just want to announce that I had an opportunity to watch a little bit of the climate summit today, and it's very inspiring. Very inspiring. People from the world of finance, Janet Yellen, just people, a wide range of world leaders, and it gives me some hope.
Amen to that. Scott.
I can't believe I forgot to mention that the builder registration bill is kind of languishing in Senate rules right now, and that would be a building block for getting some training out there for builders.
Yes, and we've been pushing.
I don't know what happens. I mean, how do you get it out of rules?
Well, it's a committee vote. I've been pushing on, ironically, since the Senate has already passed this bill in years past, one would think it wouldn't be too hard. But it's an economic development bill. They're dealing with a bazillion other bills. So because it came over a little late, it automatically goes to rules. We have to take an affirmative step to spring it out of there, which we are trying to do.
Okay, great. Thanks.
All right. Representative Dolan for the final word, the final word.
Okay. Waiting on H108. I hope the Senate will vote it out shortly. As you know, that really provides the state the tools it needs to evaluate pipeline projects that may be carrying fracking oil through the state. So that's an important bill for us to move on.
All right. Duly noted. Thank you, everyone. Have a good few days. And